Harbor and Vine Restaurant, Asheville, North Carolina. A light spring rain taps the window. Sullivan Vance, 40, dark wool coat folded beside him, has waited 31 minutes. He reaches for his wallet. The door opens. A woman steps in, damp from the rain, scanning the room until her eyes find his. She crosses to the booth and sits without removing her coat. Her voice is low. "I'm so sorry I'm late. I found your daughter on the corner of Marsh and Lexington. She's safe. She's with Mrs. Petrie. She heard you say where you were going." His wallet stops mid-air. He does not answer. For 3 seconds he does not move. Then his hand finds his phone, and his thumb finds Mrs. Petrie's contact, and he stands and walks toward the back of the restaurant without a word. The hallway by the kitchen smells of garlic and steam. He presses the phone to his ear. Mrs. Petrie answers on the second ring, breathless. She is talking before he speaks. Willa came in through the front door 10 minutes ago. She had walked from somewhere. Mrs. Petrie hadn't known. She had been making tea. She thought Willa was reading on the couch. She is so sorry. So sorry. Willa is sitting at the kitchen table drinking warm milk. She is calm. She is fine. Sully closes his eyes. He tells Mrs. Petrie to stay with Willa. He will come home as soon as he can. He thanks her. He hangs up. He stands in the hallway for another moment, his hand against the wall. When he returns to the booth, his face has lost something and gained something at the same time. The woman has not moved. Her hands are folded on the table in front of her. She is waiting. He sits. He looks at her the way a man looks at someone he has just understood was real. "Thank you," he says. "You're welcome. I should go home. She's fine. Mrs. Petrie has her. Stay if you want. Leave if you need to." He stays. He sets his phone face up on the table beside the candle. The waiter approaches and retreats. The woman watches him decide. "I was on Marsh Street," she says. "I was driving here. I had a 4 o'clock that ran until 6:30, and I should have rescheduled, but I thought I could make it." The rain was light. I saw her on the sidewalk near the corner of Lexington. She was walking with intention. Children don't walk that way when they're lost. I pulled over. "And she told you?" "She told me her father was at Harbor and Vine, and his name was Sully, and he had brown hair, and he was wearing a coat with a wool collar." She knew Mrs. Petrie's phone number from memory. I called Mrs. Petrie. I drove her home. I walked her to the door. I waited until I saw her inside. He nods. His hands are flat on the table. "Why didn't you call 911? She thinks before she answers. "Because I looked at her. She wasn't afraid. She was looking for her father. A report would have separated the two of you for 48 hours. A phone call wouldn't. You took a chance on that. I made a judgment. It is the same thing." "It isn't," she says. "But I understand why you'd hear it that way tonight." He laughs once, without sound. He says her name in his head before he asks it aloud. "I don't know your name." "Harper. Harper Kincaid." "Sully Vance." "I know." She tells him then that she is the new director of the Buncombe County Department of Health and Human Services. She took the post 2 weeks ago. Child welfare is one of her divisions. She does not say what that could have meant for him. She does not need to. He looks at her across the candle. He understands very slowly that she could have made tonight a case file. She had chosen to make it a phone call instead. The street outside his house is empty when he pulls in at 11:10. The porch light is on. Mrs. Petrie is at the door before he is halfway up the walk, and she is crying in the soft way a woman cries when she has been holding it in for an hour. He takes her hands. He tells her Willa is fine. He tells her to go home and sleep. He will come over in the morning. She nods. She holds his sleeve for a second longer than she means to, then lets it go. Willa is asleep in the small bed by the window. Her bird book is open on the pillow next to her head. He sits on the edge of the bed for a long time. He does not touch her. He watches her breathe. A man does not always know the shape of his life until the shape changes. Sullivan Vance had been a pediatric trauma surgeon at Boston Children's Hospital. He had spent 12 years in the operating room. At 36, he had been head of the unit. At 36 and a half, he had stopped. His wife's name was Mara. She was a federal public defender. She had carried twin girls. On one of those nights when life arranges itself around a coincidence, Sully had taken a swap shift for a colleague at her father's funeral. He had been in the OR with an 11-year-old boy whose femoral artery had been severed in a car accident. The boy lived. While Sully had his hands inside the boy's leg, Mara had developed an amniotic fluid embolism in their bedroom. By the time the call came through to the surgical floor, Mara was already on a gurney across town. By the time Sully reached her, she was gone. Lily was gone with her. Willa, the second twin, had been pulled from her mother, placed in an incubator, and given a chance. He had no clinical fault in any of it. He had what physicians call the sin of absence, a failure no diploma washes off. He resigned 3 months later. He took Willa to Asheville, where his father had owned a small bookbinding shop on Lexington Avenue that had sat dormant for 15 years. He opened it again. He learned the trade. He raised Willa. That had been the shape of his life for 3.5 years. Tonight the shape had changed. In the morning, Harper walks past on her way to the county building. She steps in for 2 minutes. She asks how Willa is. He says she is fine. She nods and leaves. She does not push. Augusta Rhodes comes in 10 minutes later. She is 67, with a long gray braid and the steady eyes of someone who has spent a lifetime in rooms where children needed her to be steady. She had heard from Mrs. Petrie. He tells her what happened. She listens. She asks the woman's name. He says, Harper Kincaid. Gus is quiet for a while. She doesn't bend, she says, but she sees. He looks at her. I know her from the County Health Council. She testified at the Mecklenburg Reform hearing 5 years ago. Half the room was against her. She didn't raise her voice once. There is a pause. Gus sets her tea down. I should have told you a long time ago, she says. I was a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's for 31 years. I worked your unit for 4 of them. I was on shift the night Mara died. I saw you walk out of the OR. I never told anyone in Asheville who you were. I moved here 2 years after you did. Partly because I lost Calvin, partly because I wanted to know that the surgeon I had respected most still had someone watching from the edge. He sits down on the workbench stool. He does not speak for a long time. He is not angry. He is something else being made visible, after 6 years of careful invisibility, by a woman who had decided to give that visibility back to him slowly, on his own pace, with no demand attached. Thank you, he says finally. Gus nods. She picks up her tea again. She'll come back, she says, if you let her. He does not ask which woman she means. He is not sure she means only one. 2 mornings later, Sully walks alone to the corner of Marsh and Lexington. The sidewalk is dry. The light is gray and clean. He stands there for almost a minute. He looks down the block toward the building where Mrs. Petrie lives. He looks the other way, toward Harbor and Vine. He tries to see what his daughter had seen the angle of the rain, the lit window of the restaurant 6 blocks away. The choice she had made to walk toward something she trusted. Then, he keeps walking. The restaurant is nearly empty at 7:30 in the morning. The manager looks up from the espresso machine and nods at him in a way that is not quite recognition and not quite welcome. The careful neutrality, a small-town restaurant, offers a man who has been there in his worst hour. Sully takes the booth by the window. The same booth. He orders coffee. He drinks half of it before the door opens again. Harper steps in. She does not see him at first. She goes to the counter, asks for an Americano, and turns toward the room to wait. Their eyes find each other across the empty tables. She does not smile. Neither does he. He stands. He crosses the room. He stops a polite distance from her. May I sit? She nods. They take a small table near the counter. Her coffee arrives. She wraps her hands around it. How is she? Fine. She slept until 8 on Saturday. She has not mentioned the rain or the sidewalk. She told me the chickadee came back to the feeder. Harper nods. He looks at the table for a moment. Mrs. Petrie is not herself, he says. Her grandson left for college in August. She has been quieter since. I should have noticed. I was the one she was watching for. I should have noticed. That's the kind of failing that comes from caring about one person too much, Harper says. It isn't a moral failure. It's a logistical one. They are not always different. They are this time. He looks at her. He does not argue. I am going to recommend a daytime check-in service for her, Harper says. Not a report. Support. With your permission. You have it. She nods. She drinks her coffee. The street outside is waking a delivery truck. A man walking a dog. The long shadow of the courthouse falling across the corner. Why Asheville? He asks. I left Charlotte after 7 years. I wanted a smaller jurisdiction. I wanted a place where I would know the names of the people my decisions affected. Charlotte had become a city where I signed things I had never read in rooms I had never been in. I needed to put the decisions back into the same room as the people, and it's working. It's slow, slower than I would like. But yes, he turns his cup in his hands. Why did you stay Friday night, he asks, after Willa was safe. You could have left. She thinks about it. If I had left as soon as she was safe, the only thing you would have remembered about me was fear. I wanted you to remember something else. He looks at her. You did. She does not answer that. She lets it sit between them. Outside on Lexington, a clock somewhere rings the half hour. Her hand is on the table beside her cup. His hand is on the table beside his. The distance between the two hands is the width of a saucer. Neither of them moves. Neither of them speaks. The clock finishes. She stands. She says she has to go. At the door she turns. I am going to see Mrs. Petrie Tuesday afternoon, with the paperwork. He nods. She steps out into the morning, Saturday morning at Marsh Lane Bindery. The garden behind the shop is small, a square of grass enclosed by a low stone wall. 2 old apple trees. A bench Sully had built himself from cedar scrap. Willa sits on the bench in her windbreaker. The bird feeder hangs from the lower limb of the nearer apple tree. Sully made it out of walnut offcuts. The bell at the front of the shop rings at 7:53. Sully looks up. He is at the workbench, hands inside a calf leather binding for a 1903 Atlas. He sets the tools down. He wipes his hands on the apron and walks to the front. Harper is in the doorway, coffee in each hand. I am not interrupting, she says. It is not a question. You're not. She holds out one of the coffees. He takes it. He has not had to be handed a coffee by anyone in a long time. The small mechanical fact of accepting it sits in his palm. Willa invited me, she says, Friday night. In the car. She asked if I had ever seen a chickadee. I said no. She said they come Saturday morning at 8. He had not known his daughter had said any of that. She's in the back. Harper walks through the shop, past the long racks of books waiting for spine repair, past the leather rolls on the wall, and out the back door into the garden. Willa looks up. She does not run to her. She just nods, scoots over on the bench, and pats the stone beside her. Harper sits. They do not speak. They look at the feeder. 7:59, 8. A small bird drops onto the feeder. Black cap, white cheeks. The wings flutter once and settle. Willa whispers, "That's him." Harper does not move. Theodore eats. He looks at them both, his head cocked, the tiny mirror of one black eye fixing on each of them in turn. Then he flies. From the back window of the shop, Sully watches them. He sees the woman's profile and his daughter's profile, the two heads at the same angle, the same stillness. A weight he had not known he had been carrying for 3.5 years moves a fraction off his chest. He waits until the bird is gone, and the two of them have looked at each other before he steps out. Harper stands. They speak briefly. Her phone is buzzing in her pocket, a work call, a Saturday emergency. She has to take it. At the alley by the side of the shop she turns. Tuesday with Mrs. Petrie. Still all right. Still all right. She nods. She is gone. Sully goes back into the garden. Willa is still on the bench. She is looking at the feeder where Theodore had been. She came back, Willa says. She did. Theodore came back too. He did. Willa hugs her knees. She is quiet. Sully sits beside her on the bench. The morning light has changed since 7:53. It is a different gold now. The apple trees throw small shadows on the grass. He puts a hand on the back of his daughter's head, very gently, the way he had used to do when she was 4. She leans into it for a second, then sits up straight again and goes on watching the feeder. Theodore does not come back. Neither of them is disappointed. Monday morning, Harper's office, 9th floor of the county government building. The light through the east windows is hard and white. The unpacked moving boxes have been pushed against the back wall. The desk is cleared except for a manila folder, a phone, and a cup of coffee. A knock at the open door. Commissioner Volney Kirkham, 56. Gray suit, navy tie, the kind of polished smile a politician develops in his second term. He has been on the Buncombe County Board for 14 years. May I, please? He sits. He compliments the view. He compliments her decision to take the position. He says the county is fortunate to have her. Then his face does the small shift. I understand there was an incident Friday evening. An unaccompanied minor. She does not blink. There was a situation Friday evening that I resolved through a discretionary contact with a known caregiver. You did not file a UMR. I did not. May I ask why? Because filing one would have produced harm without producing safety. The child was already safe. The caregiver was identified, present, and competent. The parent was contacted within 20 minutes. A report would have triggered a 48-hour separation and a CPS interview without serving any protective function. It's the protocol. It is one protocol. The other is judgment. My job description includes both. He smiles. The smile has nothing in it. Director Kincaid, I want this new department to succeed. I genuinely do. Your predecessor was let go because his discretionary calls compounded into a pattern. A pattern is what a board notices. A pattern is what the press notices. I would hate for that to be the start of your tenure. Was that a warning, Commissioner? It was an observation. He stands. He shakes her hand. He leaves. She stands at the window for a long time after he goes. The hard white light cuts a line across her desk. She does not move. She drives to Marsh Lane Bindery after work. It is almost 6. The shop is closing. Willa is across the street at Gus's. She will learn later Gus had insisted on Monday afternoons. Harper steps inside the shop. Sully looks up from the register. I thought you should know that a county commissioner came to my office this morning to ask about Friday night. He goes still. Nothing happened. He did not do anything. But your daughter's name has now been in a sentence in a county commissioner's mouth, and I think you should know that. He locks the door behind her. They sit in the back room of the shop. He turns on the small workbench lamp. The light catches the spines of the books waiting on the rack. What does he want? My job. He wants his nephew in this seat. He has been waiting for me to make a mistake since the day I arrived. He thinks he found one. Is Willa a mistake to him? Willa is a lever. To him, Sully sits with that for a while. The lamplight catches the edge of his cheekbone. His hands are flat on the bench. I am not going to let her become that, he says. His voice is very low. Neither am I. They sit. Neither of them touches the other. Neither of them speaks again for several minutes. The double shadow of two people sitting close, cast by the workbench lamp, lies on the cedar beam of the ceiling above them. Tuesday afternoon. Harper finishes with Mrs. Petrie at 3:40. Mrs. Petrie is steadier than she was Friday night. The check-in service paperwork is signed. There will be a visit Monday and Thursday, 10 in the morning. A quiet woman from the volunteer registry whose grandson is now in high school and who has been looking for something to do with her mornings. Mrs. Petrie holds Harper's hand at the door and does not say thank you, because some kinds of help do not want to be thanked. Harper steps out onto the sidewalk. Augusta Rhodes is on the porch of the house next door. In a wicker chair, a cup of tea on the table beside her, a folder in her lap. She lifts a hand. Director Kincaid. Have you got 5 minutes? Harper walks over. Sits in the chair Gus gestures to. I have been waiting to meet you, Gus says. She introduces herself. Then she tells Harper, without ornament, that she was a pediatric nurse at Boston Children's for 31 years, that she worked Dr. Sullivan Vance's surgical unit for 4 of them, that she was on shift the night his wife died, that she watched him leave the OR, that she watched him leave the building, that she watched him leave medicine, that she retired and moved to Asheville 2 years after he did because she had lost her husband and because she had wanted to know that the surgeon she had respected most still had someone watching from the edge of his life. Harper listens. Her hand stays still in her lap. I had not told him I knew him in Boston until yesterday morning. He told me, then you know there are now 4 of us in this town who know who he was. You, me, Sully, and the commissioner who is about to find out. Harper looks at her. Volney Kirkham has a nephew, Gus says. Trent, 32. He has been trying for 6 months to get a fast-track licensure for an adolescent residential treatment center in West Asheville. Under your predecessor, it would have been approved in 3 weeks. Under you, it has been on hold because the application materials raised clinical questions. How do you know that? Because the West Asheville facility is the same operating model as a facility in Springfield, Massachusetts, that the state shut down in 2018. I was a consulting nurse on that closure. I kept the redacted version of the closure documents because I thought I would need them again. She lifts the folder from her lap. I needed them again. Harper takes the folder. She does not open it on the porch. The incident Volney is leveraging, Gus says, is not actually about the unaccompanied minor report. It is about distracting you, defensively positioning you, or removing you before you can deny Trent's application. Why are you giving this to me? Because Sully has finally let someone walk into his garden. I am not going to let a county commissioner walk her back out. Harper closes the folder slowly. That night she drives to the shop. Sully is closing up. She lays the folder on the workbench between them. They read it together. He sees the pattern before she does. He puts his finger on 3 lines on page 7. He explains each one. He explains what those 3 lines would mean for a 13-year-old child in a seclusion room for 72 hours. He uses the words a physician uses, short words, hard verbs, no decoration. He has not spoken like this in 3.5 years. Harper watches him become the man he had been. She does not comment. He does not notice he has straightened his back for the first time in 3.5 years. When he looks up, she has closed the folder. "Thank you," she says. He understands. Not for the folder, for letting her see. The Regulatory Review Board convenes Thursday morning. 6 members at the long table, 2 clerks, a court reporter. Trent Kirkham's licensure application is the 3rd item on the agenda. Volney appears in the back of the room 10 minutes after the meeting starts. He is not on the agenda. He is not a member. He sits as an observer. He says nothing. Harper presents. She walks through 11 specific deficiencies in the application staffing ratios that would violate state minimums, a seclusion room policy with no medical officer review, an unlicensed clinical director, an incomplete fire suppression plan, a missing assurance for therapeutic restraint training, a billing structure that suggests the facility intends to seek Medicaid reimbursement for services it is not credentialed to provide. The deficiencies are sourced, they are dated, they have been corroborated by an external clinical consultant whose name remains sealed at the consultant's request. The 11th deficiency is procedural. The applicant has not addressed a request for additional information dated 46 days prior. The vote is 4-2 against. The application is formally denied with leave to reapply after substantive revision. Volney waits for Harper in the corridor. The polish drops. "You just made this personal, Director. I made it correct. I have called a closed-session ethics inquiry into discretionary decisions made by your office since you took the post. The inquiry will reference the unaccompanied minor incident from the 18th. File whatever you'd like, Commissioner." He smiles the smile without anything in it and walks away. That night, a reporter from the Asheville Citizen-Times leaves a voicemail on Harper's office line asking for comment on a tip about an unaccompanied minor incident involving the new HHS director. The reporter calls Sully's shop 15 minutes later. He does not pick up. The reporter leaves a similar voicemail. He listens to it twice. Then he drives to the county building. It is nearly 10 when he arrives. The 9th floor lights are still on. Harper is in her office, packing a box not because she is being fired, but because she is making room on a shelf for the files she actually needs. He sits across from her at the long conference table. "Don't put Willa in this," she says. "I can survive it." "There is another way," he says. "I can put myself in it." He explains. He will go on the record as the parent. He will state that Mrs. Petrie was the caregiver, that the situation was handled, that Harper's decision protected his family from administrative intrusion he did not want and did not need. He will name himself. He will not name his daughter. "You understand what that means?" Harper says. "I understand. Once your name is in print, somebody will search it. The Boston Children's history is under NDA, but it is not sealed in the press archives. Somebody will find it. By Tuesday, I know." She watches him. "I have not wanted my daughter to know what I was. Not yet. I wanted her to know me as her father first. As a story second. Then don't do this. I would rather she read the truth from me on the back porch than hear it from a kid in her class next year." The room is very quiet. Harper looks at him. It is the same way she had looked at him at Harbor and Vine 4 weeks ago, that careful, complete looking. Then it had been kindness. Now it is something else. And she knows it. And so does he. She stands. She walks around the table. She sits in the chair beside him. She lays her hand on his forearm. She leaves it there. He looks down at her hand on his arm. He does not move. The office light reflects in the dark window glass 2 figures sitting close, very still. in the small bright square of a building that is otherwise empty. Friday morning. Sully sets 2 bowls of oatmeal on the kitchen table. He puts brown sugar in one and not the other. Willa is in her school clothes already, her hair brushed but not yet pinned. He sits down across from her. "I want to tell you something before I go to work," he says. "Before anyone else tells you." She watches him. "A long time ago, before you were born, Daddy was a doctor for children in a hospital in Boston. I worked there for 12 years, like a hospital doctor. Yes, a kind that did surgeries, like fixed things." Fixed things, she thinks. "Why did you stop?" "Because your mother was very sick before you were born, and after she was gone, I needed to be home with you. I did not want to be in a hospital anymore. I wanted to be with my daughter." Willa is quiet. "There may be people in town this week who hear about that part of my life. I wanted you to hear it from me first." She eats a spoonful of oatmeal. She thinks the way she always thinks, slowly, completely. Then she looks at him. "Did you save kids?" He has not been ready for the question. He has prepared answers for 15 others. "Sometimes," he says. She nods. "Then it's not a secret, it's just before me." He looks at her for a long time. He does not cry. He just looks. She eats another spoonful of oatmeal. After a moment she asks if she can take the rest in the car so they are not late. He drives her to school. He kisses the top of her head at the curb. He watches her walk in. Then he calls Harper from the car. "Make the statement." That afternoon the statement goes out. It is brief. It is formal. It does not name his daughter. It names him only as the consenting parent. The Asheville Citizen-Times publishes a full account on Monday. By Tuesday morning, the Boston Children's piece has surfaced, as he had known it would. The reaction is not what Volney planned for. 3 community leaders publish op-eds defending Harper's decision. Mrs. Petrie's neighbors organize a meal train when they realize what her tired week has actually been about, and they do it without asking the county for permission. Trent Kirkham withdraws his licensure application to revise application materials. Volney's ethics inquiry is still scheduled, but it is now the 3rd story instead of the 1st. Friday evening, Harper drives to the shop. Sully is closing. Willa is at Gus's house, 2 doors down on the next street. "The inquiry will go forward," Harper says. "It will probably close in 3 weeks. I will keep my job." "Good." Silence. "I should go." He looks at her. He says slowly the line she had given him on a Friday night 4 weeks earlier, rearranged for who he is now. "Stay. We can still eat. It doesn't have to be a date." She stays. He pulls a paper bag of takeout from the back. They eat at the workbench. The small lamp is on. A few leather-bound volumes are stacked between them, waiting for spine repair. They do not touch. They do not need to. When she leaves, he walks her to the front. She steps out onto the sidewalk. She turns back to look at him through the glass. He has not turned off the light. 3 weeks later. The ethics inquiry has closed in Harper's favor. Volney issues a public statement of conciliation that is as empty as the smile he had worn in her office. In private, he is quieter than he has been in 14 years. Saturday morning. The trailhead off the Blue Ridge Parkway near mile marker 358 is empty at 7. Sully parks the truck. Willa is in the back seat with her bird book and a small canvas bag. Harper pulls in 2 minutes later in her own car. She had been invited by Willa, who had handed her the trail map at school pickup on Wednesday, and said the easiest part was the first 1.25 miles, where the ravens lived. They walk. The path is wide and shaded. The air smells of pine and wet earth. Theodore the chickadee has come back to the feeder for 17 consecutive mornings. Willa has been counting. She has marked each morning on a calendar in her room. Harper has brought a thermos of coffee. She pours a cup for Sully without asking. He says something dry about the cup being chipped. She says she takes the chipped one on purpose. He laughs, a real laugh, quiet, surprised, his shoulders moving once. It is the first time in many months that he has laughed. At a clearing about a mile in, they sit on a wooden bench overlooking a slope of mountain laurel. Willa runs ahead a short distance, examines a fern, comes back. She sits between the 2 adults. After a while, Harper says, "My grandmother used to tell me if a man can wait an hour for someone he does not know, he can wait 3 for someone he does." Sully looks out at the mountains. "How long am I waiting?" "Not long." They walk back. Sully holds Willa's hand. Harper walks on Sully's other side. They do not touch, but the sleeve of her jacket brushes the sleeve of his once at a narrow place in the path, once again at the footbridge, and neither of them moves away. At the trailhead, Willa says, "Tomorrow I want to bring Theodore some seeds." "I'll come," Harper says. Willa nods, as though she had expected the answer, and gets into the back seat of the truck. On the drive home, Willa falls asleep with her bird book open across her lap. Sully and Harper drive in silence. The road winds down. The afternoon light comes through the leaves in scattered moving panels across the windshield. At the shop, Sully carries Willa inside, her head against his shoulder, and lays her on the small couch in the back room. He pulls a blanket over her. He comes back out. Harper is standing at her car. She has not opened the door. "Tomorrow at 8, he says. 8. She drives away. He stands on the sidewalk a moment. Early summer evening in Asheville. The smell of damp earth after the small rain that had passed through while they were on the trail. He goes inside. He locks the shop. He does not turn off the lamp. Late spring. Saturday morning at Marsh Lane Bindery. The back garden has changed since April. There is a low cedar bench Sully built. There are 2 new bird feeders. There is a long planter of basil and rosemary, and 1 stubborn parsley plant that refuses to grow. The apple trees are in full leaf. Willa is at the nearer feeder with a small canvas pouch of seed. Theodore is on the lower limb, waiting. Willa pours the seed slowly. Theodore drops to the feeder and begins to eat before her hand has left the rim. Inside the shop, Sully is at the workbench. He has just finished the binding of a small book, no larger than a paperback novel, in dark green calfskin. The cover has no title. He runs his thumb along the spine. The bell at the front of the shop rings. Harper does not knock. She walks through the shop the way someone walks through a room she has come to know. She stops at the workbench. He picks up the book and holds it out to her. She takes it. She opens it. The pages inside are blank. He has written 1 line on the first page in his careful, even hand. "For what comes next?" She looks at him. "I did not write anything in it," he says. "I wanted you to." She sets the book down on the workbench, gently, beside the leather knife and the bone folder. She steps around the bench. He sets his tools down. She comes into him slowly, not the way 2 people who are in a hurry come together, but the way 2 people who have been waiting a long time finally allow themselves the gesture. One of his hands settles on the small of her back. The other comes up to the back of her neck, fingers spreading at the base of her hairline. Her forehead rests against his collarbone. Her hands are at his sides, not gripping. They stand like that. From the garden, Willa looks up. She sees them through the back window. She does not call out. She does not move. She smiles once and turns back to the bird feeder, where Theodore is finishing the seed. After a while, they walk out into the garden together. 3 people. The chickadee on the feeder. The late spring sun coming through the apple leaves in moving patches across the grass. Sully says, very quietly, "You weren't late this time." Harper says, "You weren't waiting." She lifts her face. He looks at her. He does not kiss her. He does not need to. She rests her cheek against his shoulder for a moment, and then turns to face the garden, and they stand side by side on the low stone step that leads down to the grass, shoulders touching, not holding hands. Willa lifts her open palm very slowly toward the feeder. Theodore does not land on it, but he stops eating and looks at her, and his head cocks the way it always does when he is making up his mind. She had arrived 30 minutes late for a SingleDad's blind date, and the first words she spoke, the ones that should have ended everything, had only been the beginning of the longest, quietest, most patient sentence she would ever say. The Blue Ridge Mountains have gone violet in the distance.